Hey guys, welcome to the video. My name is Salt. I'm an LR5 with over 7,000 hours in Warframe, and over the past 2 years, I've done kill per minute testing on almost every weapon in the game, and over the past 3 weeks, we've done that specifically on ArchGuns. And I actually have an individual video for each of the 15 ArchGuns that we did over the past 3 weeks. But today is going to be a culmination of kind of all of those ArchGuns. We're going to do a tier list today, and we're going to see how they stack against other weapons in the game. But before we start, let's go over our commenter board. The first commenter and top commenter of the last video is the same person. It's RoarXD Tone P4Me 9360. And then we have our recent channel supporters here of Elite Reverser, Whoop-De-Wham, and Nice Bear. Thank you so much for your support. Okay, before we start, I just want to give a disclaimer that we're going to be tiering these weapons on how they perform as either a heavy weapon on your Warframe or as a weapon on your Necromech. We're not really going to be considering Archwing, and that's just because the game doesn't have any difficult Archwing missions in it. You can pretty much easily finish every Steel Path Archwing mission with 0 mods on your Archgun, and yeah, that's just not really a great environment to be tiering these weapons in. So we're going to be tiering them in heavy weapon or Necromech form. Now I just wanted to go over how we're going to be structuring this tier list. We're going to be pretty harsh on how we rate the ArchGuns, and it's because all of the ArchGuns have the negative where when you pull them out, you're locked out of your primary, your secondary, and your melee weapon, which eliminates any kind of comboing or utility potential that you would have on a regular primary or secondary weapon. Now in Necromech form, using the ArchGuns, you don't really have to worry about that. You can only use the ArchGun anyway, so it's not a big deal there. But that is going to kind of pull the ArchGuns down a little bit. And because of that, for an ArchGun to actually get in the S tier, it needs to be at the tippity top of S tier. Because, you know, spoiler alert here, all of these ArchGuns, except for 3 of them, actually got S for kill per minute potential. But for an ArchGun, for me to consider it an S tier ArchGun, it really needs to be at the tippity top because of those downsides. A tier is for ArchGuns that are not exactly at the tippity top of S tier, but maybe with the right comboing potential, they may possibly have the ability to do that. B tier is for ArchGuns that are just fine. You know, they got S tier for their kill per minute scores, but it's not high S tier, it's either low or mid. They're fine, but you do have to start asking yourself, why don't I just use a regular S tier weapon like the Kuva Nucor that's just a regular secondary? You know, why am I using this ArchGun that has these downsides when I could just use a regular weapon? But at the end of the day, B tier ArchGuns are just fine. They're okay to use. C and D tier is there's only 3 weapons that didn't get S tier for kill per minute, and that's where these weapons are going. So C and D tier are for the 3 ArchGuns that didn't hit S tier for kill per minute. And I mean, to me, that's just a deal breaker. Like ArchGuns already have the downsides to them. And then you get these ArchGuns that didn't even hit S tier for kill per minute. It's kind of harsh there. I wouldn't suggest using these ArchGuns, but if you really just like the look or you're trying to go for some theme, I guess maybe you can use them. So we're going to start with the ArchGun that I think most people would consider just an average ArchGun, and that's the Imperator Vandal. The Imperator Vandal is just a machine gun that has high crit, low status, that pushes you more into a corrosive cold build. There's pros and cons to a corrosive cold build. It's pretty good versus trash. It's really good versus the Acolyte compared to a viral heat build, but it doesn't scale as well compared to a viral heat build. So that's the negatives of corrosive cold. But at the end of the day, it's a pretty average weapon. It feels good to use it. In our kill per minute testing, it scored in the low to mid S tier for kill per minute, which again is not unique for ArchGuns. All of these scored S except for 3 of them. So yeah, I think we'll put it in the B tier right in the middle there. I think most people would agree with that. All right, the next one we're going to be going over is the ArchGuns. This is the newest ArchGun. This came out with Noko, and this is a really cool one. It shoots out these 6 projectiles, and each one of these projectiles produces a different combined element, and each of those elements has its own status sheet, which is really cool because let's say you go pure heat on the weapon, it adds heat on each of those 6 status sheets. So that gives you a tremendous amount of potential to produce heat procs. So I think the right way to build ArchGuns is either going pure heat with Crux, or you go pure cold with Frostbite. I really wanted to try to make pure heat with Crux work. The issue I found with the ArchGuns is because those missiles have a slight homing effect, it's actually kind of hard to get headshots because those missiles kind of home into like chest area. If you're on a very dense enemy map, maybe through pure attrition, you can keep Crux at 10 stacks. But on like kind of mid-dense maps, I was having a hard time keeping Crux at 10 stacks. It was just constantly fluctuating, 10, then I would lose it, then I would get up to 5, 6, and then I'd lose it, then maybe back up to 10. So it was just constantly fluctuating there. I ended up going for a pure cold build on it with Frostbite, which was really good. I just really was hoping that I could make the pure heat build work a bit better with Crux. Again, I think on a really dense enemy map, you could. Okay, enough about that. We're gonna put the ArchGuns in the A tier. It's really good. It's actually kind of close to being in S. I think you could definitely make the argument it's either high A or low S. I personally think it's in the high A though. It didn't do as good in its kill per minute scoring as some of the weapons we're gonna have in the S tier there, and that's why I'm gonna keep it in A here. Okay, the next one we're gonna go over is actually 3 different ones, and it's because they're very similar to each other. We're gonna pull up the Singus, the Prisma Dual Decurions, and the Phaedra. So all 3 of these are kind of machine gun-esque ArchGuns. The Singus is more of a burst fire machine gun, but other than that, they're all kind of machine gun-esque ArchGuns. They all are good at getting built out for viral heat, so they get built out extremely similarly. There's some minor differences between them. One might be better in fire rate than the others. One might be better in base damage than the others, but they all function pretty much the same. Out of all 3 of these, I believe the Phaedra is the weakest one. Personally, I felt like the Phaedra was a bit weaker than the other 2. The Singus feels amazing. The Prisma Dual Decurions feels amazing. I don't know which of these 2 I like better. I think personally, maybe the Singus I prefer, but I know a lot of people love the Prisma Dual Decurions. So all 3 of these are really good and they function very similarly. Now, they didn't score the best for kill per minute potential. They still scored S, just like most of these ArchGuns did, but comparatively to the other ones, they all scored kind of like midway through the S tier. And so I think we'll put it in B with the Imperator Vandal. Now the difference and why I kind of separated these from the Imperator Vandal is, again, the Imperator Vandal is high crit, low status. That pushes it to a corrosive cold build, where these are viral heat. Viral heat scales better than corrosive cold. Although, keep in mind, viral heat is worse versus the Acolyte. So the Imperator Vandal is definitely better on the Acolyte than these 3, but these 3 will just scale better in general on just normal, thick, big enemies. So I'm gonna put them over the Imperator Vandal here. Again, I think out of these 3, the Phaedra is the weakest, so I'm gonna put the Phaedra kind of below these 2 here. And you could definitely make the argument which one you think is better yourself. I personally like the Singus, so I'm keeping it above the Prisma Dual Decurions, but I know these are a fan favorite too. So yeah, all 4 of these are just good machine guns. It's just these 3 are more viral heat. Imperator Vandal is more corrosive cold. All right, the next ArchGun we're gonna be going over is the Larkspur Prime. This is a fan favorite for good reason. It's a really good weapon. This is a chaining beam weapon, so it works very similarly to something like the Kuva Nucor, the Tenet Cycron, the Torrid Incarnon to a certain extent, where when you hit an enemy, it's going to chain off and hit other enemies. This one will chain to 3 different enemies. Now, like most other chaining beam weapons, I think all of them actually, if you have punch through on the weapon, it will punch through, and if it hits a second target, that second target can also chain to 3. So that's just a mechanic that I think some new people don't fully understand. But yeah, your main beam is the one that causes those chains, and if that main beam is able to punch through and hit a second dude, you'll get more chains out of it. So yeah, Larkspur Prime is just a really good weapon. It doesn't have innate radiation. I friggin' hate radiation. It's just a personal gripe. I do not like radiation, but whatever, it's fine. It's fine on Larkspur Prime here. Larkspur Prime easily in the S tier. I will say that I think it's in the lower end of the S tier for a few reasons. One is that the best build for it is viral heat, and viral heat is not that great versus the Acolyte, so you do have that one weakness there. It's good against everything else, right? Every other big single target enemy it's good at, as long as it can stack statuses. It's good on trash. It's just that the Acolyte, you can't stack statuses, so you don't get a lot of value out of your heat procs there. So weak versus the Acolyte, and also, again, we're kind of comparing these ArchGuns to regular primaries and secondaries. You do have to ask, well, is the Larkspur Prime much better than other S tier chaining weapons? Like if you brought the Kuva Nucor, let's just bring the Kuva Nucor or the Tenet Cycron into the conversation here. I would say the Kuva Nucor is probably about at the same level as the Larkspur. Tenet Cycron maybe a little bit lower, but I would say the Kuva Nukor is about at the same level as Larkspur, and it doesn't lock you out of your primary or your melee. So for that reason, I think the Larkspur Prime is on the low end of S, but it's still S tier. I think you would still love this weapon if you build it out. All right, next we have everyone's favorite ARC gun, the Velocitus. So the Velocitus has two different firing modes, the regular fire and then a charged fire. The regular fire is absolute doo-doo, and the charged fire is also absolute doo-doo, but it's absolute doo-doo that you can at least kind of make a build around. Now, how it works is it does massive single target damage to charge fire, and you would basically build the Velocitus just like you do other weapons that are slow and have massive single target, like the Daiku Prime, the Snipertron, where you just go blast on the weapon. When you hit that one enemy, it causes a blast proc, and all of that single target damage kind of gets converted into AoE. Now, the issue with the Velocitus is that it's not a primary or a secondary, so it can't use Acuity like those other weapons that function like that can. So it's a weaker version of like the Daiku Prime or the Snipertron or some other, you could probably name other sniper rifles that are built similarly. So yeah, it's just a weaker, clunkier version. It also has this weird thing that every time you charge fire, it like pushes you back and you can't stop that. It just happens every time you charge fire. Really annoying to use. This is also one of the 3 weapons that did not get S tier for kill per minute potential. It got A tier, but man, it was a painful A tier. It was a painful A tier to get, okay? So yeah, we're gonna put this right in the D tier. I believe this is the worst ARC gun in the game, the Velocitus. They also gave it innate magnetic. What were they thinking? Like magnetic and viral are both statuses that you get the effect on the second shot, right? The first shot produces it, or hopefully produces it if you have enough status chance, and the second shot benefits from it. This is a one-shot weapon on the charge shot, so the magnetic might as well just not even be there. That's why I didn't even mention it at first. It might as well not even be there. So yeah, just not a great weapon. I guess the one positive is that it does play very differently than these other ones. It plays, if you've ever played the Daiku Prime or the Snipertron and you kind of know how those work with the Acuity build and you put a lot of blast and it transfers that single target into AoE, you know, it's a very unique play style. It's just not, and it's good on those weapons, right? It's good on the primaries and secondaries because they can use Acuity. ARC guns can't, you know, so you just end up with a bad neutered version of them. Okay, the next ARC gun we're going to be going over is the Corvus Prime. This is a heavy cannon type ARC gun that has innate heat. It has 2 different firing modes, a quick fire and a charged fire mode. And like the weapon we just talked about, the Velocitus, its charge fire does this forced pushback self-stagger kind of thing that happens, which is really annoying. Now, the charge fire does have about 4 times the amount of base damage than the quick fire does, so it still is pretty good. Now, unlike the Velocitus, where you always want to charge fire, you can kind of choose whether you like the quick fire or the charge fire on the Corvus Prime. They both work pretty well. The projectile that comes out of the Corvus Prime is very similar to something like the Tenet Archiplasmor, where it's just one wide projectile that kind of punches through a bunch of things. That's pretty cool about it. Now, it is very slow to fire. Even in the quick fire mode, it's very slow to fire, and because of that, it did hurt its kill per minute potential. This is one of the 3 ARC guns that did not score in the S tier for kill per minute when we did its individual testing. And because of that, I'm not going to put it higher than C tier. I will say that its scoring, if I remember correctly, was very close to being in the very low end of S tier. I just didn't get that. I got A tier for kill per minute potential. So yeah, I'll put it in the C tier. I think some people might make the argument that it's B, but me personally, I'm going to put it in the C tier here. All right, next ARC gun we have here is the Mousillon. Mousillon is a machine gun that has innate heat. Every shot also explodes in a 1.8 meter radius, which is really nice. It's a, you know, a little small AoE, but it's a machine gun that shoots all those AoEs. So that's going to be pretty crazy. It also has an alternate fire that when you get 5 kills, you're able to alternate fire once, and then 5 more kills and you can alternate fire again. Works very similarly to other Deimos weapons like that. And that alternate fire, it does massive single target damage. It's really good at killing the Acolyte because this usually gets best built out for viral heat. And like we were saying with a lot of other weapons, viral heat sometimes is a bit weak versus the Acolyte. Well, with the Mousillon, you just alternate fire into him and it's either a one-shot or pretty close to being a one-shot on the Acolyte every time. So really, really good weapon. I have it written down on my list here that I was going to give it A tier, but you could easily make the argument that this is S tier. And it's just, we're gonna go back to the Larkspur, I guess, to talk about this. You know, the Larkspur, we're like, well, it's S tier and it's most comparable maybe to something like the Kuva Nucor, which is also S tier. And you'd have to kind of make the argument, well, why don't you just use the Kuva Nucor then? Because it's not an arc gun. Well, the Mouse-Salon is probably most comparable to the Burston in Karnan, where that's a machine gun. I think that also has a small AoE that happens. You know, and that's another S tier weapon. I would argue that it's higher S tier than the Kuva Nucor is. So maybe the Mouse-Salon should be S tier. I don't know. I'll keep it in the high A, but I think you could easily make the argument that it is in the S tier. So yeah. Next arc gun we have here is the Fluctus. This shoots a very wide projectile, very similar to something like the Tenet Archiplasmor. It has infinite punch through, and it has truly infinite punch through, meaning it will shoot through walls, through floors, through any objects, which is really cool. I think in normal gameplay, like if you were just doing a survival or a disruption or something, you're not going to find much extra value out of that. But maybe you could think of some weird niche things you can do with this weapon that actually has true infinite punch through. And, you know, this would be one of the only weapons that really can do that. So that's kind of cool and unique with the Fluctus there. Now the actual weapon and how it performed, it got S tier for its kill per minute potential when we were doing its individual video and testing, but I still think it's on the weaker side. We did build it out for corrosive cold, but unlike the Imperator Vandal that you're kind of stuck with corrosive cold because of how its stats are distributed, the Fluctus I think you could kind of change and you could do different things with it. You can make it a viral heat if you wanted to. You can go corrosive cold. You can do other things with it. But at the end of the day, it still didn't perform great. It was on like the lower to mid end of S, and it also was kind of bad at single target. Well, not kind of, it was actually pretty bad at single target, where the Imperator Vandal was at least like pretty decent versus single target. So yeah, the Fluctus I think might be the first one that got S tier in its kill per minute, but we're still going to put it in the C tier just because it is a bit underwhelming in its performance. Again, it has that unique thing though, that infinite punch through that truly makes it unique. And you could probably find some cool things to still do with the Fluctus because of that. Okay, next arc gun we have here is another fan favorite. It's the Kuva Grattler. This thing is amazing. It's a machine gun that has a huge AoE. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head if it's 8 or 9 meters. I think it's one of those two. Either one, it's a gigantic AoE for a machine gun. Like if this was a grenade launcher and it had an 8 or 9 meter AoE, like I would understand. This is a machine gun with an 8 or 9 meter AoE. That's crazy. Also, if I remember correctly, it has blast on its radials, which is good. That's just nice to have a free status that's actually a really good status on your radial there. And it's also a pretty versatile weapon. There's multiple builds you can do with this. Its stat distribution doesn't really force it in one way or another. You know, you can go with a viral heat build, you can go with a corrosive cold build, you can go with some other weird janky build if you want. That's fine. It pretty much works for a bunch of different builds. So super versatile, super good, really good kill per minute, actually weirdly good at single target too. Yeah, easily an S tier weapon, the Kuva Grattler. Definitely suggest getting this one. Your biggest issue with the Kuva Grattler is going to be figuring out what kind of progenitor element you want, because there's so many different builds you can make with the Kuva Grattler. I think on my video I showcased 2 builds, a corrosive cold and a viral heat build, that I thought were the best. But again, it's kind of open to a bunch of different things. You don't have to go with those 2. You can go with pretty much any setup you want for the Kuva Grattler, and I'm sure it's going to do amazing. So yeah, definitely suggest. So the next Archon I want to go over is actually 2 different ones. It's the Kuva Ayanga and the Morga. I want to go over these together because they're very similar. They're both automatic grenade launchers, but there is some differences. And I think the differences really pushes one to be a lot better than the other. So the Kuva Ayanga, how it shoots its automatic grenade launcher is in a straight stream of grenades, whereas the Morga shoots its automatic grenade launcher in kind of a messy cluster of grenades. I wanted to go for a viral heat build on both of these here, using Crux, that way I can get more heat procs. But the Kuva Ayanga, because it's a straight stream, it's actually kind of hard to maintain Crux, because you're actually trying to like actually aim and headshot with this automatic grenade launcher, because it shoots pretty accurately to where you're aiming. Whereas the Morga, because it's kind of messy, you're just getting headshots through pure attrition. You don't even have to be aiming that well at all, really. You just have to aim center mass, and through pure attrition, because those grenades are kind of messy and they kind of, you know, fly out randomly, they're gonna hit heads. And so it was super easy to keep Crux up with the Morga, whereas the Kuvayanga, it was pretty hard to keep Crux up. And I kind of felt ridiculous having to really aim and be super precise with this automatic grenade launcher. I'm like, what the hell am I doing here? So that pushed me with the Kuvayanga to go for a corrosive cold build instead, because that way I could use frostbite and I didn't have to worry about Crux there. Whereas the Morga, I was able to stay with a viral heat build with Crux, and viral heat is just going to scale better than corrosive cold. Corrosive cold does have some positives to it. It's better versus the Acolyte than viral heat, but otherwise viral heat usually scales much, much better. Also, the Morga has an alternate fire where it's like a Deimos weapon. You get 5 kills and then you're able to alternate fire once, and then you get 5 more kills and you're able to alternate fire again. And when you do alternate fire, it shoots out this like super grenade, I guess you could think of it. It kind of bounces around and eventually it'll blow up in a 20-meter radius. It's a huge radius this blows up in. And so not only do you have like the regular grenade launcher part of the Morga, but you also pretty often are shooting out these like super grenades that just bounce around and will eventually blow up and do a massive amount of damage. And because of that, the Morga got way, way better in its kill per minute testing than the Kuvayanga did. And I would easily say the Morga is an S tier weapon. I personally like it better than the Kuva Grattler. I know the Kuva Grattler is a fan favorite. A lot of people are going to say this is the best art gun, and I wouldn't argue with that, you know. But personally, I like the Morga, so I'm going to keep this on top of the Grattler there. Now, the Kuvayanga, comparatively to the Morga, is weaker, and also because we got pushed into a corrosive cold build with it. It hurt its kill per minute, and it's definitely going to hurt its scaling because it's not going to scale as well. And so I think the Kuvayanga is in the high B tier here. I would rather use the Kuvayanga over like these machine gun-esque weapons that don't have any AoE there. But I don't think it's much stronger than them. And I think something like the Muslin or the Arbusep is going to completely dumpster the Ayanga. So yeah, we'll keep Ayanga in high B tier there. All right, the next art gun we have here is the Mandanel. This is Corvex's signature weapon. And the Mandanel has innate radiation and it has 2 different firing modes, a quick fire and a charge fire mode. The charge fire mode, when you shoot it, it leaves this radiation field behind for 8 seconds. And when you shoot through that field with the quick fire, it's going to give you all kinds of extra buffs on your shot. So extra damage, extra status. There's a bunch of stuff that you get here. So ideally, you're going to want to be charge shotting, then quick fire a bunch of times through it. Then after 8 seconds, that'll go away. Then you want to charge fire again, quick fire a bunch of times through it. So it's kind of clunky on how you use it. Also, the charge fire does that weird pushback mechanic like we had on the Corvus and the Velocitus here. So very clunky to use. And you would think that maybe with all that clunkiness and with the buff that you get, it would make up for it, right? You do a lot of damage, you'd get a lot of kill per minute. Well, what do you get from it? You get one of the weapons that didn't even score S tier for kill per minute potential. This is one of the 3 art guns that couldn't get S tier. I would say this is one of the more egregious ones because at least the other ones didn't have to do weird stuff to even hit in the A tier, right? Like the Corvus Prime is just a slower weapon and that's why it only got A tier. The Velocitus is, I guess the Velocitus is kind of its own story here, but but at least the Corvus is just slow and that's why I got A tier. The Mandanel is slow and clunky. It's just painful to use. I know this is a fan favorite. There are a lot of people that love the Mandanel and swear by it, but man, this struggled to get A tier and it was painful to get A tier with this just because of how clunky it is. Yeah, I would say this is easily in the C tier. You could probably make an argument that it should be D tier just for how painful it is to use and how clunky it is. I think I'll still put it in the C tier though, because I think the Velocitus deserves to be by itself in the D tier. So yeah, we'll put Mandanel in the bottom of C tier there. Okay, and the last art gun we're going to be going over is the Cortege. So the Cortege is a heavy flamethrower. It has innate heat on it, of course, because it's a flamethrower. It has infinite body punch through, and it has an alternate fire that it's like other Deimos weapons where you got to get 5 kills first. So you get 5 kills, then you can alternate fire. You get 5 more kills, and you can alternate fire again. And what the alternate fire is it shoots this big explosion, and wherever it hits, it leaves this lingering heat fire field behind that does damage and also heat procs. But the actual explosion, like the initial shot and explosion of that alternate fire, does massive damage. And if you have the Acolyte like right next to you and you just aim at his feet, it'll pretty much one-shot the Acolyte. So massive single target potential. The actual weapon itself is, you know, you're gonna build it out for viral heat, of course, because it's a flamethrower. So it's usually, viral heat is usually pretty bad against the Acolyte, but you don't have to worry about that because of the crazy alternate fire on it that'll pretty much one-shot the Acolyte. And versus everything else, versus enemies, like thick enemies like Thraxes and Xmuses that can stack statuses, you stack a massive amount of heat procs, so really good at single target, really good at trash killing. This is an amazing weapon, extremely powerful. This is probably this and the Morga are like my favorite ArchGuns in the entire game. And I'm gonna put the Cortege up in S tier, right with the Morga there. Again, I know there's the Kuva Grattler is a fan favorite. There's probably some people that think the Grattler's the top, and that's fine. That's a fair assessment as well. Okay, now that we got through the tier list, I just want to go over the possibilities of switching tiers on some of these. I'm happy with where all of them are, but I just want to go over where I think you could make the argument where it should go up or down. And that would be the Arbucep. I think you could definitely make the argument that it is low S. I think the Mouse Salon, you can easily make the argument that it is in the S tier. B tier, I'm very happy with. I think these are all fine where they are. C tier, you might make the argument that the Fluctus and the Corvus Prime could be low B. And you could make the argument that the Manzanelle should be D tier with the Velocitus. But I do believe that the Velocitus belongs by itself in the D tier. Well, that's everything, guys. If you liked the video, consider leaving it a like and subscribing for future content. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have an amazing day. All right, bye.